21. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia. Present. Councilmember Stolberg.
Here.
Councilmember Stone. Here. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Councilmember Holloman. Here. Councilmember Littlewer. Here. Mayor Rodering.
Here, we have a quorum. Delighted to be back in person at City Hall. The first item of business on our Committee of the Whole meeting tonight is approval of the minutes from the June 14th, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve them as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Our scheduled business this evening is a presentation concerning solar photovoltaic system zoning consideration and SolSmart designation discussion. Looking forward to hearing that.
Thank you, Mayor. It's interesting to be in this box up here. It's good to see you all. Yes, a little bit. It echoes a little, but I will make do. Well, thank you. Tonight we're talking about solar voltaic systems and how we zone for them in our city, and also how we might, through some changes, earn a higher designation in SolSmart. So a little bit on the project background and our overall recommendation. This is a 2021 major project, and it was set out to explore changes to our zoning code per the city's sustainability plan to foster further development of solar energy within the city. Our recommendation is to amend the code explicitly to allow accessory solar installations with appropriate area, height, setback, and screening requirements. So currently, our zoning code doesn't explicitly regulate solar installations. Instead, roof-mounted solar is allowed as an accessory use by right, provided they meet setback, height, and other relevant regulations. Ground-mounted solar may not qualify as an allowed use structure, as an allowed accessory use structure, depending on a determination of whether the standards are met for accessory uses and structures. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Okay. Since 2014, the city has approved 60 roof-mounted and 2 ground-mounted solar installations. So again, they are allowed, but they are not explicitly allowed in our zoning code. We have 5 main areas of policy consideration and recommendation tonight for this Committee of the Whole. One is accessory use only. So that means allowing roof and ground-mounted solar installations to be allowed by right as accessory uses only in all zoning districts. That's what we have now, essentially, except that ground-mounted solar, again, may not in all cases be appropriate and considered as accessory use to a residential home, for instance. The other option is to allow, as a permitted use, ground-mounted or roof-mounted, as a principal use, ground-mounted solar installations. Our proposal is not that, although it is a reasonable thing to consider, and perhaps the council would like us to, as part of the public hearing process, consider ground-mounted solar as a principal use in, let's say, industrial zones. The second area of policy recommendation has to do with the maximum area of installations. And again, we're using the lens of accessory uses as a regulator. Here, we're looking at roof-mounted installations to be contiguous with the roof of the mounting structure, whatever that is, a home, a garage, or other structure. For ground-mounted installations, they should not exceed 5% of the net buildable area of the lot or 500 square feet, whichever is less. And that would be the by right option. Special use for all other small scale installations up to 1,750 square feet. Height. Roof mounted would be allowed to exceed the height of the principal structure height limit for the zoning district by 10%. There are times when they can't be flush. Well, they can be, but they work less effectively by being flush with the roof. And so sometimes tilting the panels up toward the sun or at a particular angle, depending on the roof angle, makes most sense in terms of generating electricity. And so we think that's a reasonable allowance to allow for that flexibility, since it's really impractical to change the roof height of an existing building. Staff will also develop height limitations that are in relationship to the structure for solar arrays. So if you have a solar array that is mounted on a particular structure, there are several limitations that we may want to institute that would take into account particular types of roof designs. We don't have the particulars here tonight. I just wanted to highlight that as well. So there may be some more nuance to that particular height limitation or allowance, if you will. For ground-mounted solar, we are recommending they be limited to 10 feet in height. Screening, staff recommend all ground-mounted installations be screened with some type of evergreen planting. Again, we will come up with more detailed regulations as part of the process should this go forward. But we think that's important as the ground-mounted structures may have some unsightly structural elements to them underneath the panels themselves. For setbacks, requiring ground-mounted solar structures be 10 feet from any property line when within a required rear yard and be set back at least 30 feet from any existing home or attached building, porch, or deck. And this is essentially to allow for appropriate setbacks and aesthetic considerations for those types of structures within residential districts primarily. We also recommend allowing roof-mounted solar structures be built within a required setback or on a non-conforming use or structure as long as solar panels are built within the footprint of an existing roof and do not exceed the existing roof height by more than 10%. So if you have a home that's a pre-existing non-conforming, it's legally there, but it's non-conforming, you can still do this. You don't need to get a variance or a special use permit. You would be able to use your existing home's roof and have a solar installation.
Joel?
Jill?
Yes,
Kim has a question.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't-
One quick question. On the
Yep.
30-foot setback, that would be from somebody else's home,
Correct, and it's the actual home structure, not the property line. So the
Okay.
home would have to be close.
Okay.
So it could be closer if you wanted a ground-mounted solar by your own house, it could be closer to your home, but
Correct.
30 feet from your
Correct.
neighbor. Okay.
Yes, thank you. That's a good point. That's from the perspective of abutters, yes. So how does this all tie in with SolSmart? Although we're not recommending these changes solely to increase our standing with SolSmart, it does in fact meet some of the criteria to bring us up to SolSmart Silver should we choose to apply. And so,
Joel, actually,
Yes.
Michelle has a question
Oh,
also.
I-
Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to that same question that Kim was having. So the 30-foot setback, is that based on our setbacks for some other thing? I mean, it seems like a lot to me to be 30 feet from your neighbor's house. I live on a 40-foot lot. So basically that it would not be able to happen. So I'm just wondering if it's a precedent that's set somewhere else, if we're requiring screening and other ways to disguise it, does it really have to be 30 feet?
no, it doesn't. That was just a recommendation from staff based on our review of the Lake County ordinance and just other items that we had researched as part of the.
And to that point, it might make sense based on different zoning areas to have different setbacks. Steve?
Yes, exactly. I was saying that or a percentage.
Right.
Based on the lot. That's sometimes how we do it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, Ravinia lots are 40 by 130. That would eliminate the entire subdivision of Ravinia.
And other areas as well. So, great point. Kim?
I think we had a similar discussion regarding the chickens, and where the setback for chicken coops was huge and meant that many people couldn't have them, and we came up with a solution. So maybe something
Yeah, wasn't it like
similar
8
would be
feet
appropriate.
instead of 30 or something? I mean, we came down a lot.
Yeah, I don't remember
Right.
what the result was, but maybe we need to look at that so that it's consistent.
Sure, and this is exactly the goal of the workshop, and we appreciate the feedback, and we will incorporate feedback from council.
Annette has a question and Adam has a question. Annette, go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't know when it was proper to ask questions,
That's
so I
okay.
need to go back to the height just for a quick
Okay.
second. And I just wanted
Yes.
to know if there was like an industry-wide standard, because some of the literature was using 5%, and I see here we're saying 10%. And I don't find either objectionable. I just was wondering what's most common in the industry.
It really depends on your roof and things like that. Generally, yes, 5% can cover things, but we did not want to
Limit it.
tie this down so tight so that we're going to just miss. You see what I'm saying? And so we did provide a little more, if you will, some of the other literature out there.
Thanks. Adam?
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick question, Joel, and it's to Annette and the other points about setback. If you can go back a couple slides, there was one thing that said it must be entirely within the footprint of the existing home. Did I read that incorrectly?
No, that has to, you didn't, but what we were looking at there were non-conforming buildings, so hold on.
Right,
Let me
but
see, right.
for each zoning district, as they have different setbacks and side yard requirements and percentages.
Sure.
I think to be consistent with the existing code, maybe we follow a little bit of a path similar to, if you can build a building up to 8 feet from a lot line, or 10 feet, or whatever it is, or 25% between the two, combined side yards, maybe the ability to put solar structures should be consistent with the physical building. Then it makes it, for someone who's got a structure on that lot, it makes it consistent with everything else that's there.
That's great, clear direction. I understand what you're saying, and yes, so make the setbacks associated with these be set to what building setback requirements are. Sure, as generally, I think that's consistent.
I mean, if a
with
neighbor's got to
other-
look at my roof or it's got a solar panel, it's the same distance away. And frankly, some of these solar panels are nicer than some of these, older roofs, so.
And just keep in mind the following, that the setbacks only pertain to ground mounted. Roof mounted, you can be on the structure wherever that
Thank
structure
you for
happens to be,
clarifying that.
okay?
Okay.
And that's what the second bullet
Got
here
it.
is talking about. If you happen to have a home that is non-conforming, you could still put a solar structure
I
on your
understand.
home. Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
No, that's okay.
One more question from Kim.
No, it was that clarification. So
Okay.
so the ground mounted, we're talking about the 30.
That's all we're talking about, is the ground mounted, yes.
Although one other thing, you're talking about screening for ground mounted solar.
Yes.
I'm assuming that we will also take into consideration the impact of roof-mounted solar on neighbors, because there are some configurations where if there's roof-mounted solar, it might reflect into a neighboring window, depending on the configuration of the two homes.
Great point.
The relationship, so that should be looked at as well.
Throughout the year. Right,
Ground, yeah.
right.
Not for ground-mounted, for roof-mounted.
For roof mounted.
Right.
I would contend that ground mounted might pose a more likely scenario for that, but yeah, I mean, the roof mounted can as well.
Let's add that, given the
Just on-
challenges we've had with folks with their spotlights on their
Yep.
eaves and all of those issues, so.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joel. Now we'll let you finish your presentation. We're so excited to be here with you.
The point that was just made about, and thank you, I am too, even in the box. I feel like we're in the penalty box here, I'm sorry. Anyway, so the point made about the glare and the other aspects, some high-efficiency windows even actually create situations where there's reflectivity that causes heat to be generated on adjacent homes at times when they're very close setback. I've had experience where, in some cases, in a rare case, siding can get melted or deformed from those high-efficiency windows. I don't know of much in terms of that with regard to solar panels, but we'll look into it. My concern is that how will we be able to discern this as staff? If we're having a by right approval process, we certainly could require information, but that would certainly be more information than we've required to date. So I just point that out, but we will research that and advise accordingly.
I would just comment that with respect to panels that are, or whatever is going to be put on the roof, the tendency is that it's going to reflect at an upward angle. And so it is less likely to reflect into a neighbor, but the possibility does exist. So approaching it as, and I would think that would be a relatively easy thing to identify whether it's actually happening, and go out and look at it and see if there's light being reflected into the neighbor's window at a particular time, and simply state that as a condition of the installation, if it appears that that is happening, you would be obligated to put up some sort of screening to disrupt that, but not as a preliminary requirement.
Okay. And we're referring to both roof-mounted and ground-mounted in that.
Well, the ground-mounted, you've already indicated is going to have some sort of screening and is much more likely to cause a reflection problem because it's low, and if the light bounces upwards from it, it can certainly get into an upper window.
That's what I was thinking earlier as well, Councilmember. And the screening intended for the ground-mounted would really just pertain to the structural elements that support the actual solar panels, would not really extend beyond that threshold or plane where the panels are because the light is needed. So we wouldn't want to create shade. So just as a point of.
Okay, I see more arms up. Can we let Joel finish the presentation? Can you remember what you wanted to ask? Because we're trying to wrap this up by 6. Okay, Joel, take it away, and then we'll be back with more questions.
Okay, so how does this tie into SoulSmart? Well, we are a SoulSmart Bronze community since 2017. SoulSmart Silver is the next step on a continuum that goes up to gold, and SoulSmart Silver requires reasonable changes that we've talked about here tonight to make what the city already allows pertaining to roof-mounted solar allowed explicitly in our zoning code, not as an accessory use, which is a determination. It's not an explicit permission. So that, along with completion of specific training for staff related to solar permitting and inspections, could earn us the SoulSmart Silver designation. And we would apply separately from this process to obtain that once and if we adopt the code changes and once we've assessed the costs associated with the training program. So in terms of requests for feedback and next steps, of course, I welcome more feedback, and I definitely want to hear if there's any other feedback on this matter so that we can incorporate that into our proposal before going to a public hearing on it. So we'll do that, and then schedule a formal zoning code amendment public hearing at the Planning and Design Commission. And then, of course, final consideration by council of the Planning and Design Commission's recommendation at a date thereafter. That's the end of my presentation.
So with regard to all the reflecting, I'm a little worried that if we start putting on additional regulations, we're kind of negating the whole purpose, which was to make this more by right. So I'm wondering, have we had issues with that in the past? Is this something we need to be very aware of? Kim, you have more experience with this, but how regulated do we need to be in terms of reflecting and things like that? I don't have any experience. But. Yeah, like I just don't want to add another level of regulation when we're trying to, make it easier.
Yeah, can I add to that before Joel responds? I was actually thinking of a specific situation in a neighboring community where there's a very sloped roof and the homes nearby are lower, and the solar is on this very sloped roof and reflects into the other homes that are lower. I think that this is something that would be very rare, and I think if we can look and see if there is some sort of regulation that would address this from a neighboring community or somewhere else, another SoulSmart community, maybe we can use that as an example. I don't think it's something that we need to spend a lot of time on, and I don't think screening is necessarily helpful because screening shades the panels, which we don't want to do.
Defeats the purpose.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, the screening intent from our recommendation is related just to the structural elements below the panels on ground mounted. Yeah, that's an aesthetic concern. That's all that is. Yeah.
Yeah, this is in a different area. Is there any potential conflict between the regulations around heritage trees and the by right? So if heritage trees have to be brought down in order to allow for solar use, would that need to be taken into account?
We did take into account that in terms of implications in our conversations internally, but while you may have a by right situation in terms of being able to build something, you do not have a by right ability to take down a heritage tree. So it will not change the Chapter 94 provisions related to relief needing to be sought from the Zoning Board of Appeals to remove a heritage tree. So that will not occur from this amendment. However, I mean, with anything that you allow as a permitted use, there are other types of trees that are of lower quality and less importance that may come down associated with development of houses, solar panels, and other things. So it may lead to more trees coming down, but they would not be a heritage tree necessarily. They may be other trees that are less important and regulated differently by our code.
So, and if somebody needed to then appeal to see they need to get permission to bring a heritage tree down, then they will go through the.
We'd have to go
Appeals
through the zoning
process.
board of appeals. Nothing that we change in the zoning code is intended nor will change that requirement in chapter 94. So we'll be sure to make that clear in our communications to the plan commission as well and to the council, should it come back for final recommendation.
Great, thank you. Annette?
I just would like to know, what does it mean if we go from bronze status to silver status in terms of our standing as a city?
I don't have the stats on that, but maybe Rob does, on what that really means in terms of how many communities or other types of information you might have, Rob.
Sure. SoulSmart is it's a program funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, and it's ultimately intended to reduce barriers to solar installations. Within the Chicago area, there's a number of communities who either are bronze, silver, or gold. Close to us, communities that are silver include Northbrook, Wilmette, Hawthorne Woods, Lake Zurich, Mundelein. It essentially means that you have taken further steps to reduce those barriers. And so right now we're bronze. We've gone through that process, and this is the next step that would allow us to achieve that silver designation.
But there's no sort of tax benefit or any kind of like incentive?
It's mostly recognition based.
Okay. That's fine.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, you had, in the packet, you had included the model ordinance from Lake County. And I think that that is a good starting point, because the more consistent we can be across the county, the better, since there's a number of solar providers that provide solar installations
Sure.
all across the area. It also, to me, makes sense to address solar in all zoning districts, not just single family, if we're going to be doing it.
Great point, great point. Any other
Thank you.
questions? This was a great presentation and a great conversation, so thank you for
I
bringing it
had
to.
one question.
Sure,
if
go
I may,
ahead.
Mayor. Yeah. To follow up on Councilmember Stone's comments, yes, we intended to have this apply to all districts, as does the accessory code does now. One question we did have was whether or not there's a desire to have as a principal use in, let's say, industrial zones, just ground-mounted solar as the only use on a property. That would be the one aspect of any feedback on that, because at this time, we can go forward with just the accessory, as we had said, or we can look to include some provision for that reasonably as well. In addition,
I, of course, have an opinion.
if there's
Of
any,
course, have an
if there's any
opinion as well.
feedback.
So do you want a straw poll from the group?
Whatever feedback, Mayor, you and the council feel is desirable. If you don't have any, that's fine. It just,
Okay.
we will move forward with what we've proposed.
Who's in favor of allowing in light industrial ground use of land for
As a
solar?
principal, yeah.
As a principal use.
Okay. Thank you. I just didn't want to miss it if we went through the process and then
Right.
have to do it again, should there be a proposal for a principal use. We do have some industrial sites that are open, as we know, and could be useful in this way as a principal use. And there are, in many cases, in other jurisdictions, those situations.
Right, and I don't know if we have any or many brownfields in Highland Park, but there are, I believe, also tax credits related to the creation of solar and brownfields. So, great.
Thank you very much.
Great
And thank you
questions.
for
Thanks,
not
Phil.
limiting me to 3 minutes in the penalty box.
No more hip checks. Okay, with that, is there a motion to adjourn this committee of the whole?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. We'll be back at 6:30 for the city council meeting.
Flying.
We're going to take a picture of all of us being here in our pages. Call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Highland Park, Illinois, June 28th, 2021. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia. Present. Councilmember Stolberg.
Here.
Councilmember Stone. Here. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here?
Councilmember Holloman.
Here.
Councilmember Littlewer.
Present.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held June 14th, 2021?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the warrant list?
So moved?
Second.
Any comments or questions on the warrant list? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia. Yes. Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman. Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays, and the warrant list is approved. We will continue on to the report of the mayor. The city has 18 commissions, boards, and advisory groups composed of volunteer residents who provide valuable guidance to the city council. These citizen volunteers are appointed by me, and I am seeking the city council's consent this evening on the following recommended appointment, and that is the appointment of Lori Flores Weisskopf to Human Relations Advisory Group. Do I have your consent?
Yes.
Yes.
Terrific. And welcome, Ms. Weisskopf. We appreciate, I know she's on Zoom right now, appreciate your volunteerism on behalf of the City of Highland Park. Thank you. Continuing on, I have no proclamations this evening. I do have other business, and tonight I'd like to ask us to have a moment of silence. Tonight marks our first meeting in these City Council chambers since March 14th, 2020. And on that day, we called a special meeting to address the growing threat of COVID-19 in our community and in our nation. A declaration of emergency was issued for Highland Park, and the governor's first stay-at-home order followed shortly thereafter. I know I speak for all of my colleagues and city staff in sharing that we're so happy to be back in person at City Hall, able to safely meet with each other and with you. Although, of course, we recognize if it's your preference to tune in to our meetings online or via TV or computer, we're glad to have you here as well. This last year and a half has taught us all so much about leadership, resilience, and strength. We should each be proud to live in a community where everyone stepped up to do their part to slow the spread of the virus, to find solutions to assist neighbors in need, and to support our local businesses. I could share so many inspiring stories of our community coming together during this pandemic. We organized food drives and donated masks. We drove seniors to medical appointments, volunteered to check in on neighbors, and more. As a city, as a nation, as a global community, we also experienced great loss over the last 18 months. And in Lake County, families mourned the passing of more than 1,000 loved ones due to COVID, and more than 600,000 Americans have lost their lives in this pandemic. So before we proceed any further this evening, I'd like to invite everybody to join us in a moment of silence for those who have been lost to COVID this year. Thank you. Thank you. I'd also like to mention that if getting vaccinated is still on your to-do list, now is a great time to do it. The state of Illinois is running a COVID vaccination lottery for adults and kids over the age of 12. All 3 vaccines approved for use in the United States are safe and effective, and it's never been easier to find an appointment. Visit cityhpil.com/vaccine for more information. And that is it for the report of the mayor this evening. Continuing on with our agenda, the next item is business from the public. This is for citizens wishing to be heard regarding items not listed on tonight's agenda. Do we have any citizens who have joined us this evening wishing to be heard?
Mayor, we have 2 people that have joined us via Zoom, so I would just invite them at this time that if they'd like to make any comments under the section of the agenda, just to raise their virtual hand. We can call on them. All right, and I don't see them. And then Individuals are also able to email us at cityhp@cityhpil.com, and we have not received any emails to date.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Continuing on with scheduled business. Items 1 through 6 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. I'll be pulling item 6, so I'm seeking a motion to approve items 1 through 5.
So moved.
Any comments or questions on items 1 through 5? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman. Councilmember Littlewer. Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. Items 1 through 5 have been approved. Item 6 is a resolution approving a memorandum of agreement between the City of Highland Park and the Ravinia Festival Association. Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, I will recuse myself because of my role with Ravinia Board.
Thank you. Okay, I'm seeking a motion to approve item 6, the resolution approving a memorandum of agreement.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Anything? You bet. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman. Councilmember Littlewer. Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and the item is approved. Continuing on under other business, item 7 is a resolution approving an agreement with NHZ and Associates Limited, doing business as the Heron Agency of Chicago, Illinois, for social media marketing services.
Thank you, Mayor. As Amanda is making her way up to the podium, I would like to introduce you to Amanda Civitello. She's our communications manager. You have seen her name since she started with us last February, but due to the pandemic, we've been seeing a lot of each other on Zoom, but people have certainly been seeing her name as she has really hit the ground running, communicating a wealth of information through all the different modalities. So I just want to take a moment to thank her, and we're so proud that she has joined our exceptional team. What we have before you this evening is a report and recommendation to enter into a professional services agreement with a marketing agency. So Amanda is going to introduce our team, give you background about this proposal, and we are looking for your direction and feedback as we move forward.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Gita, for those kind words. And Gita's right, you might be hearing from me right now, but there is a team behind this project. So Assistant City Manager Sabo and Business Development Manager Hirsch were key parts of everything you're going to hear about from me. So know that this is 100% a team effort. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce Noreen Heron, who is the founder and CEO of the Heron Agency. Noreen is here to answer questions if you have any of them when we conclude the presentation. So with that, we're going to delve into an overview of the scope, objectives, and evaluation for this proposed project. If it'll skip for me, there we go. All right, so we actually first identified the need for this project earlier this year. Feedback from business and property owners, as well as members of BDAC, indicated that a citywide marketing campaign would be key to supporting our businesses post-pandemic. We want to think beyond getting back to where we were before. We want to think ahead, look forward. And to do that, we know that we need to bring new people to Highland Park. So marketing to our current consumer base really isn't an option in order for us to achieve those goals. And our first goal is to raise awareness about Highland Park as a regional destination for shopping, dining, entertainment, anything you could possibly want to do on the North Shore, you can do it here. All right. Did I accidentally click that? I'm so sorry. Okay, good. So also undercutting this is that we know the consumer trends have changed. We know that now there's a greater focus on shopping online. So residents might be less likely to give up some of those conveniences that they've been accustomed to, like curbside pickup, delivery straight to their homes. So we know that traffic to brick and mortar institutions is down. So one of our secondary objectives is to drive that foot traffic back to Highland Park restaurants and businesses. Given our current market conditions, which we all know the economy is rebounding, we know that social media marketing is essential to achieving both of those objectives. From the perspective of a social media network, they're invested in their advertising revenue. They make paid advertising lucrative for their advertisers, and they make it harder for brands to reach their target customers organically or unpaid. The other interesting thing as a consequence of the pandemic is that organic and unpaid reach has consistently declined, and more so during the pandemic. You might remember, I don't know, last spring, Facebook was one of the first to come out and say that they were going to limit the number of brand posts you were seeing in your newsfeed because they wanted you to see stuff from your friends and family. They wanted you to connect virtually, and to do that, they reduced the reach of brands like ours. But the other interesting thing about advertising is that it has value beyond that. We know that if we invest in paid social media, we'll be able to target the people we want to reach. So right now, when we post on our Facebook page, we're reaching our current follower base organically. So it's great that we have 6,000 followers, but whenever we make a post, we're hoping to reach just a small percentage of them. By investing in paid advertising, we'll be able to target the users that we know will be successful in helping us reach our campaign objectives. And then finally, another interesting piece is that social media networks want to see you deliver value to your followers. They don't want to see an endless list of ads or boosted posts. What they want to see is a content mix that includes both paid components and organic components, so that you are consistently delivering content that's meaningful and not just advertising. All right, so what are we talking about when we talk about this project? Well, this campaign, like I said, is designed to position Highland Park as a regional destination. So our goal is to highlight our dining, our shopping, our cultural attractions, our natural spaces, all of that in one cohesive campaign. This was something that came up from BDAG, who showed that there was a strong interest among our business and property owners in positioning the city as unique among our North Shore communities because of the mix of attractions that we offer. And of course, core to those are Ravinia Festival and the Chicago Botanic Garden. In order to do that, though, we still need to maintain our typical calendar of communications. So investing in a social media marketing agency, such as Heron that we have here, will be valuable for us long-term because it means that we as a city don't need to shift our attention from the communications that we need to do in favor of this campaign that we know is equally necessary. As far as the RFQ process, we issued an RFQ. We received 17 submissions. We scored them according to some consistent categories, focusing on their project experience, their relevant client base, their understanding of our project goals, and the quality of their creative samples. And we'll get into a little bit about why we chose the Heron Agency in just a minute. So one other important thing to note about the RFQ that we issued is that right now the city currently focuses all of our social media marketing efforts on Facebook. For us, it's been the most valuable return on our time. But we know that trends are changing in Highland Park, and we've heard that from our business owners. We've heard stories from business owners who are using Instagram pretty effectively. We've heard from business owners who are using TikTok. So we know that we need to do more. And while being on TikTok might not be where we're going, we know that we want to branch out to Instagram. So the agency that we ultimately do choose, if we choose to move forward with this project, will need to work on launching that Instagram presence for us, because you might already follow us. If you don't, you should. But we have a very limited presence on that network. So we anticipate about a 6-month campaign beginning this July, running through the end of the year. The idea is to have something that changes with the seasons, is flexible, and continues to generate engagement for us even beyond that December 31st conclusion. The funding for this comes from the city's advertising budget, which previously has been directed to print advertising. Print advertising was something that we looked at as a staff and also put to BDAG. And from that feedback, we learned that print advertising might not be the most effective way for us to reach our potential client base. And as I said, the attraction about social media is that we can choose who we target. You can't really do that with a magazine. All right. So how will this work in practice? To give you an idea of how that would look, up on the screens you'll see kind of a breakdown of the different tasks that comprise this project. One thing you'll note is that the city will be directly responsible for certain deliverables. A few things I think, Carolyn, I think we wanted to highlight here. In addition to developing and executing this social media marketing campaign, the agency is going to be tasked with doing some long-term work for us. So some of those aspects will include developing a photo library. So we'll have a library of creative assets that we can use during this campaign and beyond. So think like stock photos, graphics that we can reuse, videos that we can remix and use for different purposes. In addition, they'll also help us identify those target markets. So when we say we know we want to target people who will see us as a dining and entertainment destination, well, what do they look like? How are we going to find those people? What are their differentiating characteristics? The agency will help us figure that out and then help us target ads that will reach them. And then finally, like I said, they will grow our Instagram presence through a mix of photos, videos, and stories. They'll also be responsible for reporting on those key performance indicators that they'll decide in concert with us, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. To give you an idea of the city's investment in this, the city will be responsible for developing a standalone website. So we'll call it a microsite. The idea is to come up with a standalone website that is visually and content-wise distinct from the city's current site. So if you notice, our website does have a wealth of information about business development, but this will be more specifically targeted towards a marketing view, which we don't really do. The website will remain live after the campaign ends, so our goal is to use this as an opportunity to develop evergreen content that people can return to again and again, that we can refresh as needed, and that will continue to drive people to our business districts, to our cultural attractions, and any special events that we hopefully bring back next year. The other aspect that I think city staff will be primarily responsible for will be managing our traditional earned media. So if you are not familiar with that, that means your basic public relations, writing our press releases, liaising with our press contacts, that kind of thing. And then, as far as campaign evaluation, we are going to develop metrics to monitor success during our initial meetings with our proposed agency. What that means is that we'll decide what those key performance indicators look like for us. What metrics would we need to hit in order to demonstrate that this is successful? It's a little hard to do when you have a campaign that doesn't involve people selling something, because when you convert a visitor to your website to a sale, it's easy to see that conversion. For us, we won't have that, but there's ways that we can work around that. We could track how many people are re-engaging with our posts. We can look at how they engage with us. Do they click through to our website? Do they sign up for a forum? Do they register for the e-news? We can also look at the way that they interact with our website. So we can track our total and unique page views. We can look at what they do when they're on our website. Do they download our city guide? Do they click through and visit another restaurant? Those are all things that we could sit down, talk about, and determine what will be successful for us. All right, and then as far as ensuring a good return on our investment, this was something that was important to all of us on the project team. Most importantly, we were glad to hear that the agency would be focusing on A/B testing. Just to define that for you, that's when you put together two different approaches to your content, an A piece and a B piece, and you test it against a randomized group. In this case, what it would look like would be that they would put together some content, run it as a test, and then ensure that our budget is directed towards the posts that are doing the best. This way, we're not throwing money behind posts that are ineffective. So all of that to say, we are very pleased to recommend the Heron Agency to manage this campaign, primarily because we are impressed with their data-driven approach. We feel that being able to demonstrate through our metrics, whether on our social media accounts, through visits to our website, is really essential for us to know that this is working. We are also impressed by their deep knowledge of relevant sectors in the Chicago area. So I'm not sure if you had a chance to read through the packet. You'll see that Heron is an agency that focuses on lifestyle marketing, on dining, retail, tourism, and they are very much a social media metric-driven entity with a background in public relations, which to us was a win, because that's something that we're going to manage on our end, And it's such a benefit to us to have that depth of knowledge to ensure that there's cohesion between all the different work that we do. So with that, I'd love to take your questions, and if I can't answer them, I know that someone else can.
Mayor, before we jump into questions, if I may add to this a little bit, I know one of the questions that arose was municipal experience in working with government entities. And as you can imagine, 17 proposals, there was a strict amount of review that went into this decision-making process and recommendation. When we looked at Heron's product versus the other products that we've seen, first of all, there's very few entities that submitted with municipal experience. Heron's product really, out of all of the firms that had submitted proposals, hit it out of the park as far as engagement and knowing how to utilize social media to bring in additional traffic. Some of the other firms that had municipal experience didn't necessarily have that specialty in social media, which is what we're looking to do. And so based on that, based on a pretty in-depth review and a lot of questions and back and forth, we determined that Heron does meet what we are looking to do in Highland Park the best out of all the firms.
Terrific. Thank you for the clarification. Any questions?
Okay, I'll lead us off.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I think it's a great idea. I love the idea of not just saying the pandemic is over and people will come back. I think we need to be aggressive out of the gate. I think we have some of our own challenges with vacant stores and some other things, but we also have some things to be excited about with some really great restaurants and stores coming. And, the BDAG meeting we had the other night, Caroline, there was a lot of exciting stuff. I guess my only question, and I don't know if it's directed to the agency or to staff, this is a 6-month campaign for $30,000. I know it's difficult to quantify an ROI or be able to poll our merchants or see a jump in sales tax revenue or even just the happiness of our constituents. But what do we hope to achieve in this 6 months? And if the engagement works, looking forward as we're already talking about next year's budget, what are we in for? Where do we need to continue this? Do you recommend status quo, and is $30,000 an annualized number that we need to start putting $60,000 in the budget? Do we kick it from there? Once people are engaged, do we scale it back? I am not a social media expert. I don't even know what an Instagram is, but you could ask my daughter. But I would love to, this is, I think, a good first step, but if there's not a game plan down the road, I don't want to just, as one of 7, put 30,000 out there and take a flyer. So maybe someone could, if appropriate, give me a little background on that.
Sure.
Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, I want to say that my team is just so unbelievably proud to have, just to be here, and hopefully it will pass. But we were thrilled to hear that we were one of 17, so thank you for that. The thing about social media is that the numbers don't lie, and I think you referenced this briefly, but you will be able to see all of the metrics and analytics, and it's all about the engagement. So you will be able to see exactly how many people are seeing your posts. You'll be able to track with your Google Analytics who was on Facebook and how did that transfer. All the artificial intelligence of social media, it's quite trackable. So you can't lie. In fact, a social media agency, there's a lot of pressure to perform because we can see on the back end exactly how the campaign goes, and the numbers don't lie. So we have to increase your followers, and I think that was one of the big components of the campaign, was getting the right kinds of individuals following you. We're not looking to just increase your follower numbers. We want to potentially reach people in other suburbs and downtown Chicago, et cetera, to look at Highland Park as a destination. So in answer to your question, I think it's always prudent to start with a conservative budget because you don't want to just throw a lot of money into something that you're not completely sure about. I think in answer to your question again, we can see how this works as a test pilot for 6 months and then make a recommendation, I guess it would come from you, as to how much significantly more you would increase that budget. But this is a very good way. And my agency does traditional advertising as well. I think this is a very prudent approach to try this for 6 months, see how impactful it is. I do think it will be tremendously impactful for you and a very good use of funds. And I hope that answers your question.
It does, but can I, one more?
Sure.
Okay. So you had mentioned downtown and other suburbs, and I had said keep our constituents happy. Is there a game plan for doing both? Obviously, we want to attract fellow Highland Park residents, but with some of the great opportunities we have, whether it's restaurants or the arts or other things, do you target different campaigns for different groups?
So the way that we go about increasing your followers is we create mining lists, and those mining lists are where do we think your demographic is? Where are they living? If they're in Glenview, what other accounts are they following that might be similar to, is it a high-end restaurant? Is it an upscale women's store, et cetera? So we're going to do some mix of reaching out in those surrounding suburbs and downtown, but it's very important to remind your residents of what you're offering as well. So I think there would be a blend, basically, with these mining lists, trying to reach people in Highland Park and then also surrounding suburbs. And generally, the way most social media campaigns work is that you create a target list for each month. So you're mixing it up a little bit. It might be in one month it's Glenview and Lincoln Park, and the next month it might be Barrington and Lake Zurich, but there would probably always be an element of Highland Park within each within each month and the efforts.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Councilmember Holloman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So first of all, I want to start out with a thank you to staff for bringing this up and for going through this process, because this is a rethinking of how we have been doing something, and I think that's always a little difficult. So Amanda, welcome, and nice job, because I work in this industry. This is my job, to be a communications director, and it is very unusual to find somebody who can do everything on your plate, right? To go from printed materials to social media to all of that, and for you to come to us and say, hey, you know what? I've evaluated what I do, or what we do, because you used a team to do this, and to say, this is an area that we can improve. That's what I want to hear. It's not like everything's great and we're going to, this is something, and you've found resources. You're not asking for additional funds. You guys have kind of, redirected things. And I just think that needs to be called out and recognized, because that is a big step forward and some very forward thinking. So I appreciate that very much. The reality of this is initial investment. It's actually a very small investment. So this is kind of one of those, like, you can't go wrong with it, because you would have spent this money on some other print that got thrown in the recycling bin. So what you're saying is, let's make a more active use out of that. And so I think you're going to make an initial investment, or the council, I would fully support, but what I think we're going to find at the end of this is that we can see measurable results, and there is going to be a reason to increase that allowance going forward. So I just want to kind of preview that this isn't just like a one-time thing. This is just hey, let's make the investment, see how it goes, forecast forward, and see what we're getting out of it. And I think that's a really wise way to start. The other thing I want to be reasonable about it too, this isn't going to solve all our problems. We're not going to bring, everything is going to be great after this. But what it will do is build awareness. And your point that we need to reach out beyond our community is absolutely a point on target, right? That our audience needs to grow beyond Highland Park, because you know what? We got all those people. By all means, we have no problem reaching our community. But those people who are coming from the city and are going to go to Ravinia, we could reach out to them and make sure that they understand what kind of great resources we have right here to get their basket or do whatever. So I think that's a really important factor. And that specific data that we'll have, the KPIs, the Google Analytics, I think, when you come back to us and give us a presentation in November or December saying, look, this is what we've done, I think that those measurable results, that doesn't exist in print. It doesn't exist in many other forms of communication that we use. And I think we'll be able to, that'll be great. And I really appreciate you guys coming back to us with some kind of, summary data. It doesn't need to be, hugely in depth, but what you learned and how we can grow. I think that's all great. So I fully support this. Amanda, I want to commend you for you and your team bringing this to us, and I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Littlewar.
Thank you, Mayor. I really want to start by thanking staff too, because I had a lot of questions after the packet, in part because this is new, but you really responded to so many of those, and I'm extremely grateful for that, because having just come off of a campaign where I was trying to put Instagram and Facebook and everything and quantify, how many people, how many more hits, what does this mean for me? I was wondering if staff was capable of doing that, or if we needed to branch out. And so this was very helpful in terms of its presentation. And I think there's a long way for us to go. One of the things that I really like is the fact that you're going to set a baseline sort of for us, where you'll give us some materials we can then determine how we move forward on it. But I guess one of the questions I did have was, since it is a 6-month contract, which I know is short in some people's view, but whether on a monthly basis staff will be evaluating it, and if you'll begin to how often will you be meeting so that we'll know if we're going along those lines, and if we really are seeing throughout the contract that there is growth and progress? Without getting into the weeds, because that's your job, but I want to just know how quickly we'll be able to see that.
Yeah, I can answer that. So it'll be reviewed in layers. So the core team is going to be reviewing daily metrics. They will be managing this on a daily basis. And then we as a team meet weekly. And then at the council's desire, we could send you reports monthly if you like. That's what we were anticipating, kind of monthly. You would get a report from us that will give an idea in our opinions. And then certainly, as Councilmember Holloman indicated, we could come back at the end of the year and do a formal presentation. And that way the public will have an opportunity to also see and hear what we've done and how we've come and where do we want to go from there.
I did have one other question.
Sure.
And this is just my ignorance in this whole field, but does this include the money you plan to spend in terms of purchasing advertising, or is that on top of it?
No, I'll take that. No, that's included. So this is an all-inclusive budget. The ad spend is included in that 29,000 along with the agency fees, as well as payment for the other creative elements such as the photo and video library. So this is a lot of work for a small budget, but I think it's something that will set us up for success looking ahead. And then if you wouldn't mind me just returning to something Councilmember Stolberg said, you did talk about different markets and how we were going to reach all of these different constituencies that we know that we have. And one of them, I think, if I'm reading Carolyn's mind correctly, one of those is prospective business owners and developers. And that's something that we really feel we can address through more traditional media. So we can continue reaching out to them, engaging them in this campaign, even if they're not necessarily a paid target.
Thank you very much.
Great. Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, I'm also enthusiastic about this approach and creating a platform for us to tell our story of all the many good things that are happening in Highland Park. And one thing that comes to mind is about the ecosystem, right? I mean, there's what we're advertising, but obviously there's business owners involved, and there's other stakeholders in the city. As part of this campaign, how are we going to involve them, in terms of letting them what's happening or getting their input, or we have all these activities planned, which are great, that will be advertised and marketed, but could the marketing campaign itself trigger new ideas, as part of, if there's momentum, or you start liaison with the other stakeholders, they might get enthusiastic or say, well, we have an idea here or there. How would that ecosystem work in terms of the interaction?
I'm happy to take that. So the marketing process is all-encompassing. So there's the business stakeholders, the residents, the development community. Typically, we'll bring updates and information to the Business and Economic Development Advisory Group. We also meet with the Property Owners Association in downtown, as well as property owner representatives throughout the different business districts in the community. And so this is a very public project, and there will be a lot of interaction and back and forth. And I think what's important to also remember is the A/B testing component that Communications Manager Civitello talked about, where we'll be testing information that goes out and monitoring how that information is utilized and engaged with. And so part of that process also includes communicating with our business community and communicating with our residents and seeing how those individuals interact. Oftentimes we can see, because Facebook and Instagram, the user who likes something, we can see who's liking it. So we utilize that information. We kind of basically base our decision-making and our planning based on how our engagement is doing. And so overall, it'll be an interactive process. We certainly will be communicating through the Alliance and through the POA and all of the different entities within the community, and using different touch points to also plan out some of our next steps as we go through the seasonality of communication as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
So I understand a lot of the comments that have been made and the enthusiasm behind this, but My question is, although you're going to be able to measure the metrics going into this, and obviously that's important, and to a large degree, you're treating this as sort of a launch, a sort of an experiment, there has to be within your industry experience with this kind of thing that you already have some sense of what the likely impact is going to be. And I haven't seen much discussion of that. And for that reason, I'm a little reluctant to do this. There isn't an identification as to how much of the $30,000 or the $29,000 is the agency fee and how much is going to be spent. One of the concerns that I have is that we are not the only municipality coming out of this pandemic, probably not even on the North Shore, that may want to start marketing itself. What is the tipping point at which the amount that we spend on marketing, whether it's in social media or otherwise, begins to have an appreciable impact? And is the amount that we're going to spend, even as a trial balloon, really going to give us an idea of what would or would not happen with larger amounts? In other words, is there a point at which it really does begin to have an appreciable impact? Do we need to start there? How do we know that spending smaller amounts is really going to tell us what we need to know? And what do we already know about spending?
So I'm not sure exactly of the exact breakdown of our agency fee. I don't remember offhand, but as mentioned, this does include video content, photography, and then obviously social media management. Unfortunately, my director of social media couldn't be here this evening, but she creates a whole aesthetic for the feed. She creates a content calendar that is presented 2 weeks before the first of the month. So there is a large amount of time that goes into it. And then obviously, I, as an agency owner, have to have the bandwidth to make sure someone is on it every day following. If I follow you and we've met each other, you feel more likely to follow me back because that's just how life goes. Following a business or a municipality will be a little more challenging, so there will be more labor involved. But what I would say is over COVID, because people couldn't interact in their community, with their friends, with their family, people turned in a very profound way to social media. And they're very used to now still going back to, on Facebook, Highland Park groups, et cetera. And the idea of us creating interesting content for you that can be shared, particularly by residents of Highland Park, but in general, we create fun videos, the power of that for this very small budget. And I go back to, I've been buying media for a long time. It used to be that you'd spend, for a 2-week flight on a radio station in Chicago, $29,000, it'd be over in 2 weeks. For 6 months of maintenance daily with you picking up more and more eyeballs. And the one thing I can tell you is that my agency is, we're very strategic when it comes to, as I mentioned, who we are following. So a very quick example, we opened the American Writers Museum on Michigan Avenue. We were following large arts organizations across the country and across the world, from the Smithsonian to the Louvre to the Tate. And on day one, when we opened the museum, we had 3,000 followers on Instagram with these major cultural organizations following. And the board of directors was blown away by that. And it sent a message about who we were. And that is what we want to do with who you're following on social media. We also want to follow lifestyle influencers, press, et cetera, who you want them to see what is happening in Highland Park and potentially write about it. Potentially, we want to get group leaders following you. We want to get members of MPI, Meeting Planners International, following you. So social media right now is without a doubt the most impactful medium that we have. And this is me speaking as a person who handles public relations campaigns, advertising campaigns, et cetera. It's social media, for whatever reason, isn't retaining the dollars that a PR campaign does or advertising commissions like an ad buy does, but it's tremendously impactful if it's done correctly. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I think I hear a bit of a question too about our historical use of social media advertising. And so one of the reasons why I think you heard Noreen and me refer to the idea of this baseline campaign is that we haven't historically done a paid campaign. we may have boosted the odd post here or there, but it's really hard to demonstrate growth over time when we don't have something existing to compare it to.
If I
Go
can
ahead.
follow up, I understand that, and that makes sense to me. But there must be similar campaigns that you've been involved in at this level where you have some sense of what the return is going to be.
So this is where I wish I had Annalise, because she is my metrics person, and this is her area of specialty. She came to me, she was the director of social media for Preferred Hotels, where she managed 19 properties. And she's been with me almost 5 years now, and and so much of social media, because I think we've all heard, like, well, my niece can do social media, and it's absolutely not the case, because you need all of that back end. You need to understand the algorithms, which is one thing that I think with Annalise, proactively, time and time again, and I'm sure it will be on this campaign as well, she will say, Facebook is about to change something, and here's what we should be doing so that you're aware of it, and we're proactive about it. And so you need someone who's always on that. But in answer to your question, I don't know, we've never had an account where we haven't significantly grown the number of followers. I think there are a lot of social media agencies, and I would hazard to say in the 17, there were some, I'm sure, where there's not the attention to the follower acquisition. We often point out, here's some notable followers, here's some notable people that are now following you this month, so that, again, you get an idea of what we were doing and what we were thinking. And so I can't tell you, I wish she was here to be able to tell you exactly statistically what she would guess it would be. I only can say that I know we've always pretty significantly grown platforms for our clients, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I can't answer more
So-
definitively.
Thank you. Councilmember Holloman, then Tapia, then Stone.
Not to belabor this, but I think one of the things that you've demonstrated that you'll get us out of this, right, the actual results, will be an Instagram following, right? We do not have Instagram at the moment, so we can start with that. That's a big one. Second, I think we'll see an increase in our reach and our followers, right? Those are concrete things that we can measure from today and to another day going forward. So I think those are, and third, we're going to have a baseline for a paid campaign. We have not done paid work, right? And so this will give us an idea where we are going to look going forward. There's a risk in not doing anything at this point, right? If we do not do anything, we aren't going to progress. We know that our page will be exactly the same as it is in 6 months it is right now. We will not gain anything. If we take a small risk and invest $30,000 coming from otherwise earmarked money for other projects, this is not new money. The risk is that, right now in my mind, is that not taking a chance. We don't have much to lose at this point.
Right, the opportunity cost. Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, actually, Councilman Bloomberg's question made me think, are we spending enough? I mean, I'm not going to advocate necessarily. Right, but, we.
It's a start.
It's a start, and I appreciate working within the budget, so I'm not advocating necessarily to spend more at this point. But my question is, given the budget limitations, do you feel that 29,000 is sort of optimal for the pilot, the 6 months, the objectives we're trying to do? Or are you taking some, if we had 5,000 more, just to make up a number, that would really more confidently give us a sense of more security that we might get to some of these objectives more surely?
I think what we're used to with most clients, frankly, is an approach where, is this working, then let's add to it, right? And so this is a finite amount of money where when we're in it, we might say, okay, we are seeing that events are performing better, or we're seeing that the restaurants are getting more attention. You might decide, Annalise might make a recommendation based on that more dollars should go towards this, and let's reallocate. And I think that's why A/B testing is so important. You want an agency who really is paying attention to what's happening traffic flow pattern-wise. So I think there's some measure of being able to move and change and be fluid in terms of how we're looking at things, in answer to your question. Again, I think it's a very small amount of money. We've had some, small restaurants that we've opened that have had less than that, and we've had, Hyatt Cook County Hospital where we spent a fortune on their social media. So I think it's a good I think it's a good test pilot for you. And I really feel very confidently that you'll be very, very happy with it once it's in place. And it is, to your point, you have to have it now. You have to have some representation, and that's where, and I think over COVID, we lost so many newspapers, media outlets, broadcast journalists, and this is where it's at for the future, and TikTok next, maybe after the 6 months, but anyway, yeah, no, this is where primarily it seems so many of our clients are moving, so.
And if I could just add one quick note to that, we're getting into the budget season right now, and when we do come back to the council with budget proposals, we'll have a little bit of the immediacy done, and we'll have an idea of how we can frame our proposal for fiscal year '22 and whether we grow or how we grow, how we modify that contract as well.
Great. Councilmember Stone.
Thanks. I appreciate the work you've done on this and the creativity that's gone into it. I hope that this will be measured not just in social media reach, but in the increase in people actually coming to Highland Park and patronizing our businesses. I'm not convinced that this type of campaign is going to benefit our businesses. I think the money's better spent on implementation of the streetscape, to making Highland Park a more attractive place to visit. But I hope that I'm wrong and that it does well.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So to that end, I'm seeking a motion to approve item 7.
So moved.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone?
No.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Holloman? Councilmember Littlewer? Mayor Rotering?
Aye, 6 ayes, 1 nay. Item 7 is approved. We're looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, I am too.
We're going to have to work on our dance moves if we're going to TikTok. It's not going to be pretty.
You're gonna.
Right. Continuing on, is there any business from the council? No? We'll move on to business from city staff. City manager's report.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Just 3 quick reports for public information. On Friday, Governor Pritzker did sign a new disaster proclamation extending the statewide declaration through Saturday, July 24th, and he also advanced a new executive order to extend previous executive orders. So with the signing of this new disaster proclamation, it did set forth that public meetings may continue to be held remotely. But here we are live in person. We did just want to take this opportunity to let the council and the public know about this extension of the disaster proclamation, but we are transitioning all of our public meetings back to live for our elected and appointed officials. So individuals can join us for these public meetings at City Hall. They can also watch us on Facebook, on HPTV, or on YouTube. They can watch our website. And again, of course, they can join us live for these meetings. All of the meeting schedule is posted on the city's website. And if individuals have questions, they can contact the city manager's office. Part of the new executive order does maintain the state's residential eviction moratorium. Evictions continue to be ceased unless there is a direct threat to health and safety of people or property. So if individuals have questions, again, they can contact us about that. Shifting gears, we wanted to just remind the public that we are hosting a virtual neighborhood meeting this coming Wednesday, June 30th, as it pertains to the redevelopment of the Ravinia Fire Station. So a link to that Zoom meeting can be found on our website, or individuals can contact us and we can send them that. We are planning to proceed with a public hearing before the Plan and Design Commission at the end of July. This neighborhood meeting is an opportunity for us to present the proposed plans to the public. Neighbors received direct notification about this public meeting, but this meeting is open to the public. So individuals can come learn about the project, our timeline, construction, before we formally present again to the PDC. So again, that meeting is Wednesday, June 30th, starting at 6:30. We also have a comprehensive list of frequently asked questions, which is available on our website at cityhpil.com under development and then development projects. And then last, as certainly everyone in this room well knows, infrastructure investment is one of our top priorities. And this year, despite challenges with the pandemic, we are making an investment of more than $10 million in the city's infrastructure. And so just want to remind the public, hopefully you're seeing a lot of construction activity taking place around town, but if you have questions about any of these capital projects that are ongoing, You can go to the city's website, and under development and then construction projects, there's a story map, so you can take a look at where all the construction is taking place, an overview, an update about the specific projects. So whether it's the Clavey Road Improvement Project, which is our largest project that's currently underway, or we've got concrete street repair, asphalt, there's forestry projects and everything else that's listed in there. And again, if individuals have questions, they can contact us. And then again, as previously noted, we are in the process right now of developing our preliminary plan, which will include not only the proposed fiscal year 22 capital plan, but it will include our 10-year capital plan as well. So that work is currently underway. But if individuals want to see the current 10-year plan, that's also listed on the website. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them at this time.
Terrific. Any questions? No? Okay. So to that end, I'm seeking a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. 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 Thank you. Have a good night.
Not a